My wife mentally checked out of our marriage when I got extremely sick and started having an affair, so I contacted her AP's wife and informed her of everything. We began seeing each other in secret and formulating a revenge plan, and 2 years later, we finally confronted and publicly humiliated them. For the last few weeks, I've been living the raccoon lifestyle. First, because of my raccoon eye bags, and second, because, well, actually, that's it. It all happened when I, 39, and my wife, 37, noticed I was getting super sick, like red-hot fever, weird stomach pains, random trembling kind of sickness. At the time, we lived in a tiny apartment, worked opposite shifts to save on childcare after our daughter, now 12, was born, and sometimes we struggled to make rent. Well, knowing I couldn't provide for my family made me feel even worse than you can even imagine, and it's not like I had the luxury of lying to myself that she didn't care, because she made it very clear that she did. You see, the very day I was told I may have a deathly illness, she didn't find her comfort in me, or the strength of our relationship. Instead, she took to Instagram. Day after day, I watched as she took photos of herself in the mirror, in the least amount of clothing she could get away with without her page being banned. And of course, I hyped her up, told her she was my princess, but it was like she wasn't even impacted by my compliments anymore. But we were still cuddling at night, and after all, we had a baby together, so I tried to remind myself of that whenever I felt doubt creep into my mind. But then her mother-in-law started coming over. She would sit on the couch and say things like, "My husband would have rather died than let me work a day in my life," or, "If my husband caught me living in an apartment this small, I don't think he'd ever be able to stop crying." At first I thought my wife just wasn't saying anything because she was the shy, unconfrontational type, but one day, when I started coughing up blood, my MIL came over, and instead of her little digs, she asked me if I could help her download Hinge. I watched as she proceeded to create a profile for my wife and set up dates with the richest-looking guys on the app. Meanwhile, my wife sat there watching a movie. My heart broke, and I couldn't help but feel it was my fault for getting so sick, for not being able to be a provider. So from there, I did everything I could for my health. I felt like one of those holistic herbal moms that somehow always go viral on TikTok. Every morning started with a concoction of vitamins, and every night ended with a meditational detox. And for some reason, after a few months, I got a lot better. And I guess I didn't mention this earlier in the story, but because of my sickness, I didn't know if I was going to live or die. So when I found out I was better, I was practically jumping off the walls with excitement. But apparently my wife and her mother didn't feel the same way, because when I broke the news, my mother-in-law's face completely fell. I could have sworn I saw her wipe away a few tears too. And when I looked over to my wife, a wave of sadness swept over her eyes. In the days after, I tried to rebuild the relationship with my wife. I even took out a loan to afford a very fancy romantic dinner on a boat. My wardrobe slowly transformed as I replaced perfectly good clothes with newer styles she approved of, hoping for a compliment that rarely came. But then it escalated. She'd constantly compare me to her boss. Yeah, red flag I completely missed. It was always, Jason would know exactly what I wanted without asking. Or, Jason takes his wife on these amazing surprise dates. She'd come home from work with stories about Jason's thoughtful gestures toward his employees, or the expensive anniversary gift he bought his wife Emma. Every story seemed designed to highlight my inadequacies, and what she said next actually made me wish that I had, in fact, died from my illness.